Thank you. Senator Moorlach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to direct my thoughts to the overall budget and the direction. We are looking at what I would call a bumper crop, having gone through some pretty rough years as an elected official running one of the largest counties by population in the country. It's kind of nice to be in this position where you have a little extra money as opposed to making layoffs of about 1,000 people. So equities are up, unemployment is down, and it seems that when you get a little bit of a bonus, we should be paying down our credit card balances, or we should be putting funds aside. That's a good thing. We're doing that in this budget, but paying down a little more on our pension plan liabilities or our retiree medical, which are now liabilities are up to $91.5 billion, and will be staring us in the face with the June 30th 2018 balance sheet when it comes out next spring. That's my concern about the whole process, is the bigger picture, and so if we were to pay down a pension plan liability, that's 7% interest we could theoretically be earning, as opposed to less than 0.5% right now as it languishes in the state treasury. So I want to improve the balance sheet, and so that would be some of my biases. As I apologize for being a little maybe ultra conservative, or maybe observing the glass as half full. But sometimes I sit and I think we're dancing on the deck of the Titanic, and so I think we need to be real careful. We should listen to the governor when he says we need to be prepared for the next recession, because he and I are old enough to know we go through them. So with that, Mr. Chair, this budget is doing a lot of good things, and it could do more. So with that, I just had one question for you, since this is my second go-round, and they tend to be interesting, last minute, end of the night kind of deals. This one was a little more walking in the dark for me. Nothing was clear. I 1 foot ahead, and so I'm just wondering if you could kind of give an evaluation of the process this year, and then maybe what do we do to improve it, or maybe it's the way it is, because things have evolved, and Senator Nielsen already mentioned Big Five, Big Three, and so I wonder, are we relevant or are we not? Do we need to just close down, or do we need to reevaluate the whole system?
I think that, well, first, thank you to all my colleagues for their great comments. I did want to jump off on where Mr. Obernolte mentioned, and just again thank the staff, thank Department of Finance, LAO, our Assembly budget staff, the Republican staff, the Senate budget staff, all the hours and hours of work. And just in taking that feedback, the budget is not done in conference committee. The budget is a 4 to 5 month process. It's something that we start in February, or even earlier, we start in January with the initial budget proposal. We have hours and hours and hours of subcommittee hearings, debate, discussion. We have public testimony, public comment. The bulk of the budget is done in that process, the very large bulk. I don't know the exact number, but I would say probably 90 to 95%. The budget's $140 billion. You're probably seeing the large part of it done through that subcommittee process and that discussion, that debate. The conference committee irons out the final details, the final probably few $billion that we are earning outside of Prop 98, which is obviously a large chunk of the budget. But separate from that, the final evaluation of that, we are in discussion about really just fine-tuning the ultimate details of our budget. A large part of it, again, goes through that subcommittee process, through exhaustive discussion. If you sit through our subcommittee number 1, which Dr. Rambla chairs, he can tell you about how many hours and hours and hours of hearings on every single item they have. Now, having said it, whether the conference committee itself could be improved, I think absolutely. There's always room for improvement. I think this year, I think every budget is really dependent on how discussions go and how that feedback is done and where the different versions are and how that discussion goes through. And this year did seem to be a little bit harder than the previous 2 years that I've been involved in the budget. I think there are a variety of factors. I don't think any of them are any of them are some things that we would carry over to next year, but I think it's just dependent on where the houses are and where the governor is. But again, I think the bulk of the budget, and this is what I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Obernold about this, the bulk of the budget, the legislative oversight, the discussion is done in that subcommittee process. And that is done through hours and hours and hours of painstaking testimony and feedback, and it's something that we all take very, very seriously. I know all our staffs take very seriously, and I just encourage everybody, whether it's us as senators and assembly members or the public or LAO or finance, that is really where I feel like the bulk of the give and take on the budget process are. This is really the fine tuning. This is sort of like the icing on the cake at that point. The cake's already been baked through that process. So that's how I would just answer your question.
Well, maybe just to respond, my review of the little research I've done on the state constitution is you're right. You go through the subcommittee process, and I've certainly built a good binder full of stuff this year in sub one, and enjoy the process, and fly home late on Thursdays because of it. But the governor's supposed to give the budget on January 10. We go through sub one. We go through our subcommittees, and then we should go through budget conference committee, and then it goes to the governor. That's how I interpreted the Constitution. But now it's January 10 subcommittees. The governor inserts. We get a budget, and then it comes to the conference committee. So we get a press release this morning that says, "Hey, everything's done and over," and so. I think maybe a review of what the constitutional requirements are, I think that might be good for a review, or if someone were to give me a good paper on it, I'd appreciate that for next year. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.